Hey everybody, Brian here with Trail Grid Pro. In our last video, we installed the Kicker 6-speaker bundle upgrade in our 4th Gen 4Runner. In today's video, we're doing a 5-channel amp and downfire sub box. For this 4th Gen 4Runner, it is time to get this thing living loud with a 5-channel amplifier and a 10-inch downfire sub box. Next up on our list is to get access to the back of our Sony 9000 so that we can start running RCAs from the back of the head unit down to under the passenger seat where we're going to put our new Kicker 5-channel amp. A couple of quick steps to get our radio out. First thing that we're going to do is lift up on the center console. We're going to grab on either side of this little tray here. This trim right here will come up. It's just held in with a couple of clips. We're going to clear the shifter, and we're going to go ahead and disconnect our descent control. And we also have a USB that we've added for the head unit, so we're going to unplug that and remove one other connector. We can now close our center console. We're going to put all of our dash pieces in the back seat for safekeeping. Next up is the console part that also contains the 2 cup holders. You can simply just lift up on that. Again, this will just come right out, lift it up, set it in the seat. Next up, we're going to get access to one Phillips head screw behind the little cubby here. So we're going to flip the cubby open. We're going to grab on either corner and just lift straight up and out, releasing these 2 pins right here. The one Phillips head screw is located right here under the HVAC control. Grab our Phillips head screwdriver and remove that one screw. Once we get it out, we're going to put it right here in our cup holder. Next up is the lower HVAC control. Just going to simply put our fingers underneath and give it a nice pull. It's going to pop right out. There is one connector on the back side of this panel. The tab is on the bottom. We're going to depress the tab and wiggle the plug out. We'll set our HVAC control with our other pieces. Now at the bottom of the radio, you're going to see 2 10mm bolts here in the front. There's also another 2 all the way in the back on either side of the radio. So my suggestion is an extension with your 10mm on the end. Go ahead and remove all 4 of those 10mm bolts. With our 4th bolt out, we're actually going to move to the ignition switch. There's a little trim ring around the ignition switch. You can simply just usually pop it off with your finger, or you might want to grab a plastic pry tool. Once we remove the trim ring, we'll set that with the rest of our bolts. Now there's a total of 3 more bolts that we need to remove, and they are located at the bottom of the kick panel here, or the knee panel under the steering wheel. There's going to be 2 10mm, and then there's going to be 1 10mm behind this panel once we get it taken off. So let's move down into the driver footwell and we'll get those taken out. All right, so down here in the driver footwell, if we follow the A pillar and go right up next to the emergency brake, we will find our first 10mm bolt. We'll go ahead and remove that one. Moving straight across the bottom of the knee panel, all the way up next to the center console, you will find the second 10mm bolt. Once those 2 have been removed, you can pull down on the knee panel. And then there is one more 10mm bolt just behind where you just removed the last bolt. Okay, with that last bolt removed, it is now time to remove this entire trim bezel that goes all the way kind of up the sides and around the radio. So what we're going to do is just kind of gently pull and release each side. And we're going to slowly kind of work our way around. Being very gentle on the older plastic. All right. With that loosened up, you will find 3 connections within the inside of the trim. One for the back window, one for 4-wheel drive selector if you have it, and another for the hazard. The release tab for the hazard button is located on the top. The release button for the rear window is also on the top. And the release button for the 4-wheel drive selector is right here next to the inside of the dash trim. So once we have those disconnected, we just need to work the bottom up and around the cup holder, and that entire trim piece comes out in one piece. Set that in the back seat. Grab our radio and go ahead and pull it straight out. Now we have access to all of the RCA connections that we're going to use to connect our Sony 9000 to our new Kicker 5-channel amp. With our radio out, we'll go ahead and grab a microfiber and we'll just put it down here to protect our radio. And I'm just going to go ahead and unplug that just so that it sits nicely. All right, so at this point, the center dash disassembly is complete. Next, we're going to move over and we're going to unbolt the passenger seat and make room for the new 5-channel amp. All right, moving to the front of the front seat, we're going to remove the 2 plastic covers, and under those there'll be a 14mm bolt holding the front of the seat in. So all you have to do is pull on the sides, and those plastic covers will pop off. Here are your 2 14mm bolts. Go ahead and take those off. With those 2 bolts removed, we will quickly jump into the back and release the 2 14mm bolts from the back of the seat bracket. Same procedure for the back of the seat. Going to remove the plastic covers. This will reveal the 2 14mm bolts. We're going to go ahead and take those out. With those bolts out of the way, we will go back to the front, slide the seat to the rear position, and tip the seat back. Next piece of trim that we need to remove is this sill plate here. To do that, we're just going to reach under and gently lift up and slide this out of the way. Now that the sill plate's removed, we need to remove this kick panel here on the passenger side B-pillar. There is one retainer back here in the back. I'm just going to twist that, like unscrew it and remove it. With that removed, we can grab the kick panel and pull straight back towards us. All right, so for the purposes of today's installation demonstration, I've gone ahead and just completely removed the passenger seat. This is going to make it a lot easier for me to show you all of the connections that need to be made to the amplifier. You absolutely do not have to fully remove the seat. If you just want to unbolt it and tip it back, you will have sufficient space to be able to do this part. But like I said, we just took it out so that we can show you this the best we can. So now we're going to go ahead and place the amplifier in its new home. All right, so we have our Kicker 660.5, our new 5-channel amplifier. The way that I like to place this in under the seat is so that we have great access to all of the controls on the input side of the amplifier. So for right now, we're just gonna put it into place, again, with the RCA and the controls facing out. We're gonna go right here behind kind of the under seat vents. And that is going to be our starting location. We can now start running the RCAs and running your 9-wire with your plug-and-play kit from the amplifier to the radio. In the kit that you receive from us, you will get a bundle of RCAs. So you'll have 3 different RCAs that will all be taped together. If we look at the end of the RCAs, we've already gone ahead and labeled them left front, left rear, and sub left and right on both ends of the cables. So we want to make sure that we make the same connections behind the radio to the same connections on the amplifier. Now, depending on what kind of radio you have, this Sony 9000 has 2 sub-outs. It has a sub-out left and a sub-out right. Some of the other radios, like the Sony 4000 or 6000 or the other manufacturers, may only have 1 sub-out. So what we've done is we've included an adapter that's a Y-splitter, and you get a couple of additional adapters on there. So if you only have 1 sub-out, you're going to connect the double male to your sub-out, and that will then give you 2 RCAs to connect to your bundle of RCAs. This radio does not have that. It has, like I said, it has a sub-out left and a sub-out right. So for this installation, we will not be using the Y adapter. To start the installation of the RCAs, we're just going to match them up. As you can see on this radio, it has nice tags. So here's front audio out left. So we're going to find our RCA that is marked FL for front left. This one is rear audio left, so we will find our RCA labeled RL. This one is labeled front audio right. We will find our RCA labeled FR. And this is labeled rear audio out right, so we will find the RR. Last 2 RCAs are for the subwoofer. These are labeled SL for sub left and SR for sub right. So here is sub out right and sub out left. So this is a good time to just go through and double check, make sure that you have all of the RCAs connected to the right spot. For peace of mind, if you would also like to put 1 wrap of tape just to make sure that all of the RCAs stay together when we put all of this back into the dash, now is the time to do that. So now that these are connected, we will take our other end. We're going to work it down through the dash towards the passenger footwell. We'll end up going around the carpet, the top of the carpet, and down the factory channel and come out right next to our new Kicker amp. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. If you have a fish tape or a wire coat hanger, that seems to work pretty well sometimes. Another trick that I tend to use is I will put a light on the floor shining up, and then you're just following the path of light through the dash to give you a nice clear shot for running all of this wiring. Because we want to find a nice wide open, as best as we can, find a wide open spot, because we're going to run these RCA down to the amp, and then we're going to be running another wire from the amp back up to behind the radio. So we need a little bit of space to accomplish that. So let's go ahead and run these to the amplifier.
Hearing them coming.
There is a kick panel up here under the glove box. There's 110 mil in there. We're going to drop it out of the way, just give us some more room. This is also the point, if you have a buddy or somebody to help you as you feed these wires down, they can kind of help direct them and pull them through. So Rusty's going to step in and help us with getting these RCAs run. All right, we got 2 more coming down. Should be 1 more pair.
I just got to push them over here.
All right, so hold on, let me pull some slack here. Kind of where we want them, and then we can pull the rest of the slack down. There we go. All right, perfect. As you can see, that went a whole lot easier with 2 people. You can definitely do it by yourself, but obviously more hands makes light work. So now that we have that, we will clean up the rest of these RCAs, get them tucked away behind the carpet in the factory wiring channel there at the door, and we will get the connections made to the amplifier. Now that we're down under the passenger footwell, if we look up under here right on the inside of the console, we're going to see that there's this like black rubber hose that runs through. We're pretty much going to follow it as it works its way around under the carpet, and we're going to come out here in the wired chase on the passenger side sill. So we're going to work our RCAs around, and we're just kind of move the stuff out of the way. We're just going to loosely put this in for now because, like I said a second ago, we're going to end up running another wire back in the same direction. So we're just kind of setting our path right now. Pull back the top of the carpet, tuck our wires in. I'm going to go up behind the wires here in the kick panel to release these factory wire chase clamps. Pull back a little bit and release. And we're going to do that on the 4 going down the passenger sill. Now that we have all of the factory wire chase clips opened up, we are just going to run our RCAs right down in that channel. And right after the 3rd one here, we're going to pull up the carpet. It's just held in right here next to the wire channels as well. So we can lift up on that, and we will run our RCAs through and into this opening where the floor vents come out. We'll run them back around and hook them up to the amp. Now that our RCAs are right next to the RCA inputs on the input side of our amp, we can go ahead and connect those with the little labels that we already put on there for you. On our RCA pairs here, first one we have up is right, left, and right rear. So on our amp, you can see that we have a amp 1, amp 2, and sub. The amp 1, that is going to be our front channel, so our front left and front right RCAs. Amp 2 is going to be our rear channel, or a rear left and rear right, and then sub is obviously a left and a right. So rear left, we're going to go to amp 2. The white RCAs are the left. Just going to go ahead and push that in. We're going to take our gray one that says right rear, and that's going to go in just below it. Grab another set. These are our sub RCAs, so SL is going to go under sub into the white RCA, corresponding with left, and the gray one will go to the bottom. Last set of RCAs we have are the front channel, so we're going to put those in amp 1, and then again, the left is the blue one, so we're going to put that in left, and the gray one front right into the last slot there. Now that we have our RCAs run and connected to our amp, this gets our source signal from our head unit down to the input side of the amplifier. Now we're going to use our provided plug and play harness and 9-wire to go from the output side of the amp and follow the same pathway back up to behind the radio. Next step of the process is installing the plug and play T-harness. The fork connector end here will plug into the output side of your kicker amplifier, and the connectors here will run back up to behind your radio and tee into the factory wiring so that we can use our factory speaker wires to finish the installation. So I'm going to go grab Rusty and we're going to get this run through the dash in the same fashion that we just did the RCAs.
There they are.
There we go. I got extra. I got some little bit extra. All right, with our 9-wire plug and play harness run down to the amp, let's go ahead and tidy up our connections here behind the radio. So I know that looks like there's a lot going on back here. There kind of is. So we have our RCAs. So what we're looking for is your main wiring harness on your integration, whatever you're using to integrate. So in our case, we're using the PAC RP 4.2 TY11 to integrate our Sony 9000 into the truck. So what we're looking for is the 3 main vehicle connectors here. And then we're just going to find the ones that match up. So we're going to disconnect this one, and that is going to go to the one with the green and purple wired pairs coming out of it. So you have green, green, black, purple, purple, black. So that's going to clip right in there. And then we're going to grab our other 2 connectors here. And this one's going to be responsible for your main power as well as your front channels. So we'll find the corresponding plug. You'll notice you have a male and a female here. The male from the truck side is going to go into the female from the harness that we sent you. And the male from that harness is going to replace the other plug that you just removed. So really that simple. These plugs will only go into one spot. There's no way to get them mixed up. So now that we have those connected, the last thing that we need to connect is on your harness, there was a solid blue wire with a connector on it. That is your remote turn-on wire. This is critically important to the success of this installation. The remote turn-on wire needs to be connected to your radio. This is what sends a signal from your radio to your amplifier saying, hey, the radio's on, the amplifier also needs to be turned on. If this wire is not connected, your radio will power on and you will most likely get no sound whatsoever, because now our sound source is running from the head unit into the amplifier, and the amplifier doesn't know that it's supposed to be on, therefore it's not going to do anything. So we're going to connect this bullet connector to the blue with a white stripe off of our main harness, and that will suffice. So here is our remote turn on from our harness. We're simply going to push the 2 bullet connectors together, and now our remote turn on wire is connected. That is the end of the installation from behind the radio. The rest of everything is going to happen at the amplifier. At this point, I like to go ahead and try to start tucking everything back in. Anything that you disconnected while you were pulling the radio out, make sure that you plug back in. So let's put our AM/FM antenna back in, and then we will carefully put all of these wires and modules and everything back in the dash, and we'll put a couple bolts in just to hold the radio so that way after we get done with the amplifier that we can turn everything on and give everything a test. So take your time, just find everything at home. Like I said, I know it's a lot of stuff, but it will fit. Want to make sure that the 4 bolt locations are not being obstructed by any of the cords. We don't want to pinch anything. So just work it into place. There we go. Everything's lined up. We're going to move our towel, grab a couple of the factory bolts that held the radio in. So for right now, one is just fine. We can see that the radio is not going anywhere. So we're going to move down to the amplifier, and I'll show you how to hook up that 9-wire on the other end. All right, we're getting towards the home stretch on this amp and sub installation. Next up, we're going to go over connecting the other end of the 9-wire with the little fork connectors and the other end of the remote wire that we just hooked up. So I'm going to show you a close-up here of exactly where each of the wires are going to go, and then we'll move on to power, ground, and running the actual sub wire. All right, so on the output and power side of the amplifier, we're going to go left to right here. So left is going to be, it says G and D for ground, so that's where we're going to end up putting our ground wire. REM is our blue remote wire. The plus 12V, that's going to be our power wire, where we're going to put it into the amplifier. And then right here in the middle, you see it says amp 1 and amp 2. As we remember from the other side of the amplifier, this is going to help correspond to fronts and rears. So up here on amp 1, which is the top row, you have left and right, so positive and negative. Your solid colored wire is going to be your positive, and your solid color with the black stripe is going to be its corresponding negative. Your left positive is going to be your solid white wire. Your left negative is going to be your white with a black tracer. Your right front positive is going to be gray. Your negative right front is going to be the gray with a black tracer. Your left rear is going to be green on the positive and green with a black stripe on the negative. And your right rear is going to be purple and then purple with a black stripe. So those are going to be 8 of your 9 wires from your 9-wire. So we'll connect those, and then the remote wire is going to get hooked in right here and tightened down with its corresponding Allen head. The last wire that we'll need to run, which will go from the output side of the amplifier to our actual downfire sub box, will be the subwoofer wires, and you can see that those are positives on the top row and negative is on the bottom row. Great thing about these kicker amps is they do have these Phillips head screws, and in the middle there you will see a plate, so you can slide the fork connector under the plate and then tighten them down just like that. So that's all it takes to tighten them down. What we're actually going to do is start with the bottom row first, because that will give us access to the screw heads. Then we will move to the top row for our front speakers. So starting with our left rear, the green wires, we're going to go solid green into the positive, green with a black stripe into the negative, go solid purple into the right rear positive, and our purple with a black tracer into the negative. Work our way back across. Our front is going to be gray. Front right is going to be gray. Gray with a black stripe. And then we're going to finish it off with white. And white with a black stripe. Last wire we'll need to connect is a remote wire. For this one, you'll see it is a bare wire. Simply push it in there, and then we will tighten it down with the Allen key. Now that I've kind of demonstrated that up here outside of the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and put the amp in its final location, and we'll reconnect all of our wires. All right, now that I've gone through a brief demonstration of how we're going to hook up the 9-wire, we're going to go ahead and run it under the carpet and connect it to the terminals for its final time. So again, following the same factory wire chase, we're going to lift up on the carpet, and this wire is going to go all the way through. I have to help it along under the carpet, and we're going to come out right next to the wiring harness that attached to the bottom of the seat. So this will give you enough wire to get right there. So I'm going to go ahead and make these connections, and then we're going to move on to the power and ground wire and get one step closer to finishing this up. Okay, now that we have all of our speaker wires attached, we can grab our 3mm hex or Allen, whatever you have laying around. We're going to go right to put the blue wire into the remote port, and we're going to tighten down the set screw. All right, give it a nice little tug. It is definitely not going anywhere. Next piece of cabling that we need is the ground wire for the amplifier. You'll see that it already have a eyelet on this end. We're going to ground this under our seat to the factory grounding location, and the wire ferruled end here will go right into the ground port on the power side of the amp. So again, this is going to be a 3mm hex, just like we did for the remote wire. So the wire ferrule is going to go right into the ground terminal there. We're going to hold it in place with one hand and tighten it down with the 3mm. Again, give it a little wiggle. It's definitely not going anywhere. Sometimes it's advantageous to wiggle it a little bit and then just double check to make sure that that is nice and tight. The next connection to make is the actual power wire for the amplifier. So you'll notice there's a long red wire, and then there's some protective coating over one end of it. That side is eventually going to hook up to the inline fuse next to the battery, and the other side with just the wire ferrule and the red shrink tube will hook to the power side of your amplifier. So my recommendation is run this side from the engine compartment back to your amp, so that way we can tidy up any extra wire inside the car and we don't have to fight with it in the engine bay. Next, we're going to go around, we're going to pop the hood, and we will go up into the engine bay, where we're going to pass this end of our power wire through the firewall grommet and start to run it back towards the amplifier. Obviously, we've moved up to the hood. We're going to start at the battery and start routing our power wire. We're going to go off, obviously, the positive side of the battery to our inline fuse. We're going to continue to run our power wire around across the back of the firewall, and we're going to be making entrance into the cabin through the passenger side firewall grommet. So like I said, we're going to start here at the battery and kind of work our way back. That way, if we have any excess power wire, we can hide it away inside the vehicle, and that way it stays nice and tidy here in the engine bay. Next components we're going to need are the short power wire. It's going to have the eyelet on one end, red shrink tube, and the rubber grommet. You're going to need your kicker provided inline fuse. Same 3mm hex that we used to tighten down the clamps on the amplifier. And then we're going to grab a piece of the provided Velcro. So what we're going to go for is we're going to take our power wire, which is going to be attached here to the positive. We're going to route it around. We're going to go into our inline fuse, our longer power wire is going to come out of that inline fuse, and then we're going to continue running it. So we're just going to mock it up for right now. We do not want to connect this end of the power wire until we are absolutely ready to do so. So we'll grab our fuse block here, go ahead and insert the wire ferrule into one end of it. You will note that once you work it in, the rubber grommet will seat into place. Once the wire ferrule is good and pushed in, go ahead and tighten it down. Again, just like we did on the amplifier, give it a nice little wiggle, and we will confirm that it is all the way tightened down. Rusty's going ahead and put the Velcro on the bottom there for us. Go ahead and peel the bottom of it off. Again, we're going to mock up where we want our fuse, and what we're going to do is we're actually just going to use the top of the fuse box. So now that that's in place, we will grab our longer power wire and continue running it. We're going to be connecting the end with the protective wrap and the red shrink tube with the same rubber grommet on it. That is going to go into the other side of our inline fuse. Before we do that, we're going to route it behind the fuse panel mount, just to keep everything nice and out of the way. Maybe easier to just remove this for the time being. We're going to work our wire ferrule and our grommet into place. Once our power wire and our grommet are set, we will tighten down the other side. With both ends of our power wire secure, we can go ahead and remount our fuse block and use the provided plastic cover. That will go on right over top. With our fuse block cover in place, we can start running the rest of our power wire. We're going to go around here into the corner. You can see there's a wire that comes down. We're going to loop over it and then follow along the back, and you'll see one of the brake lines runs right along the firewall. We're going to kind of follow it and zip tie as we go, as we move over towards the passenger fender and that firewall grommet. Hand this over to Rusty.
Thank you, sir.
We'll give it a twist, get any of the kinks or loops out. All right, that's probably good right there. Grab a handful of zip ties and something to cut the excess off with. Ah, look, a handful of zip ties. All right, so now that Rusty and I have the power wire tucked away nicely on that brake line, I'm gonna move to the engine bay. I'm gonna have Rusty move into the footwell area there on the passenger side. We're gonna make a small incision in the firewall grommet, and then I will start passing it through, and I'll let him pick it up on the other side, and we'll pull out the rest of the slack. The firewall grommet that we're gonna use is located right here next to the fender. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a spot and use our utility knife to cut a small X in the firewall grommet. That will give us enough room for the wire to pass through. Rusty will then be able to grab it from the inside and then work it through. Sometimes this may be helpful if you have a wire fish or a coat hanger to be able to feed the wire fish from the inside out to the engine bay, tape your wire, and then pull it through. As a general rule, if you meet a lot of resistance, just go ahead and back your wire out, get your utility knife out, and cut a slightly larger hole than what you think that you need. Because the last thing we want to do is damage the wire or just end up ripping the firewall grommet out, because then we have to take a couple extra minutes to fix it. So find any sort of location there. As you can see, we actually already have another wire run through there. So for today, we're going to go ahead and use the opening that we already have in the firewall grommet. But if you don't already have something like this, a retractable X-Acto knife or something like that, you're just going to cut a small X pattern, extend it out a little further, make sure that you're cut all the way through the inside. A lot of these firewall grommets have kind of an exterior barrier and an interior barrier that you have to get through. So we're going to go ahead and start pushing that through. Again, as he's gently pulling this through, we just want to make sure we have any kinks or loops or bends out of the wire. Keep going. All right, that's good right there. All right, from this point, we're going to go back into the factory wire chase. We're going to run our power wire and get it hooked up to the amplifier. With our power wire now run through the firewall grommet, we can follow the same factory chase here by the passenger side that we ran the RCAs and the 9-wire through. We're going to just tuck the power wire back behind, pop open the chase latches, drop our power wire in there. Since this is the last wire we're running through here, we can go ahead and lock these back as we go. At this point, we're going to take the wire ferruled end of the power wire and go around to the ground location on the power side of the amp. Again, working this through, coming out where our other wires are. At this point, we can grab our 3mm Allen, put our wire ferrule into the power side, and tighten it down. Again, give it a pull and a wiggle, and confirm that we're all the way tight. Next wire that we have to deal with is the other side of the ground wire. Right here under the carpet, you will find a factory grounding location with a pre-threaded hole and a bolt already in place. So what we're going to do, we're going to lift up the carpet, we're going to remove the bolt, put the eyelet end of our ground wire in there, and re-secure. I'll show you guys a close-up here in just a second. Okay. All right, right here under the carpet, you'll see there's this kind of metal chase here in the floor pan with the wires running to it. The grounding spot that we're looking for is right here. It's going to be a 10mm. We're going to remove that bolt. We're going to secure our grounding wire to it and then use that same bolt to go right back in its place. So I will show you the finished product here in just a second. So there you go. We can see remove this bolt right here. Here is our ground wire for our amplifier, and we've attached it right back to where it was. All right, we're almost there. Last set of wires that we have to run are these black and yellow pair. This is going to go from the sub output side of the amplifier back to where we're going to put our sub box, which is going to be in the cargo area. So you'll see that there's forked connectors on the end of this as well. We're going to go ahead and hook the yellow up to positive and the black up to negative, and then we'll start running this wire towards the back of the truck. Start with the negative black wire on the bottom and tighten it down with our Phillips head screwdriver. Now the yellow positive wire, get that tightened down, and start locating our amp into its final resting position. Run the black and yellow wire back under the carpet, go back to the chase, and we're going to start working it towards the back of the vehicle. Now that we have all of our wires that are going under the carpet run through, we can go ahead and push any wires out of the way and reconnect the carpet. And we'll just give it one final tidy up, make sure that everything is up and out of the way. Our planned route for our speaker leads that are going to the subwoofer is we're going to go down the passenger side of the vehicle under the sill trim. We're going to come up kind of near the back seat and towards the middle of the cargo area, because that's where we're going to locate our subwoofer box. One quick recommendation, these parts do not come with this plug and play bundle, but I do highly advise going to get a set or picking up a pair of these seat jackers for the rear of your seat. Once you get the seat back in here, you need just a little bit of extra clearance to be able to slide the seat forward and backwards without any chance of hitting the top of the amplifier. So like I said, these are the 1/2-inch seat jacker spacers. I picked them up directly from Seat Jacker or Desert Does It. They're definitely a great addition to this project. All right, so we have our wire run under the carpet, comes right out here in the factory wire chase. For this, we are going to make sure that it is clear of the carpet there, push our carpet down nice and flush, and we're going to go under the B-pillar. Let me move this out of the way for you. We're going to move our rear carpet out of the floor mat out of the way. For this part, we're literally just going to push it under until we get to the door sill. Then we'll take the door sill out, and we'll continue the wire down the way. Again, just like the front, I'll lift up, held in with a couple of clips, continue pushing it under the B-pillar. For these two, it may just be easier. It's not a whole lot in the way. We're just going to run these through and keep working our wire towards the back of the vehicle. Once we're here, we're going to continue along under this C-pillar trim that goes next to the back seat. Now that we've passed this, we can put our trim back. To continue running our wire, we're going to actually fold up the bottom of the seat. We're going to keep tucking our speaker wire under the plastic trim. At this point, we're going to fold down the back seat. We're going to work our wire around the seat pivot. Go ahead and grab them right there. Make sure you get both of them. Work all the slack towards the back of the truck. Once we're clear of the seat pivot, I'm just going to work our wire towards the middle. That's where we're going to put our sub box. We're also going to leave ourselves a little bit of extra wire so that if we need to move our sub box around after we've installed it, that we have plenty of wire to do so. So we're going to go all the way down this kind of 2/3 of the back seat to get in between the two seat halves. We have our kicker 10-inch downfire box here we're going to hook up. So here's our speaker wires. Remember, black and yellow. We're going to go black to black on the negative. So we're going to push the black pin down until the holes open up and insert the speaker wire and let it pinch back on itself. And then we're going to go yellow to red. Same thing, insert, let it pinch back on itself. Make sure we got good contact, metal to metal in there. And that's all it takes to hook up the actual sub box. So as far as this goes, this has probably been the easiest part all day. So let's get this flipped back over, put the subs down like they're supposed to be, and we'll head back up to hook up battery. All right, we're down to our final few steps of this amp and sub install. We have our RCAs run from our head unit down to our amplifier. We have our 9-wire run from our amplifier back up to our head unit. We have our sub hooked up. We have our power and ground hooked up, except for the last connection here to the battery. The last step before we get to turn this system on and see how much it really improved the audio in our 4Runner is to connect the last battery terminal here. So we're going to get a 12mm socket. We're going to loosen the nut here, put the power wire back on, and resecure. Now that we have our system completely installed, it's the time of the day that we've all been waiting for. First listen. So let's put the truck in accessory power. Fire up our lovely Sony 9000 ES. All right, so system has come up. CarPlay is already connected. That definitely fast. So let's pull up some music and have a listen. All right, so right out of the box, that is already a massive improvement over what we started the day at, even with an aftermarket head unit, but with the factory speakers and it's not quite enough power, this has definitely made an awesome upgrade already, and we haven't even started messing with the gains or the crossovers. So let's head down to the amplifier. We'll go over real quick about how we recommend to set gains and crossovers, and then it'll be reassembly and enjoyment time. All right, so we know our system works. Now it's time to really get the amp dialed in. So we'll go over quickly the buttons here. Starting here right next to the RCAs is a fader. You can either leave it on or off. And then moving across the top here is your amp 1 settings. So if you remember back to when we hooked up our RCAs, those are going to be our front channels. So your gain is more or less your volume. And then your crossover is going to limit certain frequencies from coming out of those speakers. So we don't want high frequencies coming out of our subwoofer, and we don't want low bass noises coming out of our tweeters. Obviously, those speakers are not designed to do that and could cause damage. So the front channels being 6x9s and tweeters, we have a little bit of mid bass and highs, so we'll adjust those accordingly. The amp 2 here, same thing, rear channels are 6.5s and our back doors. You have a gain and a crossover setting. Moving down, you have your sub input selector. You can either choose to run this off of amp 2 or the sub channel. We're going to depress the button so that we're running our sub off of the sub channel since we're utilizing all 5 channels in this setup. The next 3 dials here are all controls for your sub. First one being gain, and then your crossover and a bass boost. You also have the option of adding a bass remote. So if you want to be able to control the level of your bass from a little knob that you place on the dash or wherever else that you would like, you can do that so that you can jam out when your kids aren't in the car, and you can turn the bass down a little bit when they are in the car. A couple of indicator lights here. You have a power light. Green light indicates that the amp is on and has no problems, and the PRT is a power protection. So we're going to notice that start to flicker when you start to turn the gains up, and you risk over gaining your speakers. Obviously, we don't want to fry anything, so there is some adjustability in there. So the question we get asked all the time is, I didn't understand any of that. What do I set my gains to? So here is our official recommendation. We're going to start with the source unit, i.e. your head unit. We're going to turn the volume of your head unit up to about 75% of its maximum volume. So if you have a Sony, max volume could be 25, it could be 50. If you have something else, you could go to 100. So whatever that max volume is, we're going to turn our head unit up first, then we're going to start adjusting our gains. The theory here is maximum power out of the head unit goes into the amplifier. Amplifier only has to work a little bit harder to amplify the sound, versus if we leave the volume at 1 or 2 on the head unit, then the amplifier has to do a lot of work. A lot of work equals a lot of heat. Obviously, we don't want to cook our brand new amplifier and speaker setup. So this is something that you can play with, tune them into your liking. But like I said, start with the head unit, adjust your gains, and then any of the EQ settings in the head unit itself, that's just sprinkle that on top. So whether you like the presets in the EQ, rock, bass, pop, whatever the R&B, whatever it may be, do those last so that way you have a true incremental setting of your new sound system. So we also recommend that you tune your front gains for your front channel first, tune your rear channel, and then tune your subwoofer, and then you can put it all together and make little fine adjustments until you get it exactly how you want it to sound. Once you have your new amplifier all dialed in, we're pretty much done. All we got to do is put the truck back together so that we can drive it. So in our case, we're going to put the seat back in, and then we're going to button up the dash, and we're going to go enjoy our new sound system. All right, now we have our seat back in place. We're going to use the supplied bolts from our seat jackers, or if you do not have seat jackers, just go ahead and put your factory bolts back in. We're going to get these started by hand. Do not want to cross thread these. And once those are started, we're going to tighten them down with a 14 millimeter. If you want to take this one step further, you can torque them down to 27 foot-pounds. We're going to place the covers and move on to the front seat bolts. Go ahead and start our front seat bolts, again by hand, and tighten those down with a 14 millimeter. Next up is to replace any other panels that you removed. So we're going to plug our modules back in. Tuck our panel back up under the dash. We will secure this one with the 10 millimeter bolt or a Phillips head screwdriver. Our A-pillar panel can go back in. Push it straight in, lining up the peg on the back. And we're going to replace the button cap here. Place our door sill. The tab here goes on the back, so remember to slide that under first. Now that we have the passenger footwell buttoned up, all we got to do is put the dash back together. So we're going to go ahead and remove the one bolt that we had just kind of holding the radio in. We're going to hold it, and we're actually just going to go ahead and put this one in one of the back positions. We'll go ahead and grab another one of the bolts and put it in the other back position. Now on these, I am leaving them a little loose because once we go to put the next piece on, we may have to move the head unit a little bit to get it to fit back. So we'll be able to get back to those again here in a second. So get the large trim piece. It's going to go all the way around. Drop the knee panel once again. I'll work this piece in. Make sure to clear these corners. Once we get it close, don't forget to hook back up your hazard button. All right. Your rear window switch, and your 4x4 control if you have that. Once those three connectors are connected, work this down and in, lining up the top with our dash. Bottom wings here need to be tucked in. We'll start gently pushing it back into place. Now this is where I said it's important to leave the radio loose. You may need to actually pull up on it to get it to fit properly around the dash kit. So now that that is nice in place, you can see nice even seams all the way around. We're going to grab our other two 10 millimeter bolts and attach them to the front of the radio. At this point, you can go ahead and tighten up the back too. Next up, we're going to reach down and grab the gold 10 millimeter bolt that we took out of the driver's knee panel and secure it into place. And then put our knee panel back into place. Line up the clips on the top. Make sure you get around the ignition cylinder. Give it a nice push. We're going to reach down and grab the two black 10 millimeter bolts. Those will go in the bottom of the knee panel. Grab our ignition trim ring and pop that back into place. Next up, we're going to place our HVAC control back in. Again, one connector there in the middle. Line up the tabs under the radio. That snaps nicely into place. Grab our one Phillips head screw and put that back in the panel. Next up is going to be our cubby door. So remember, we pulled it kind of straight up and out. So just going to work it back in the same way. It'll push down, click into place, and you can close it. Next is going to be the outer piece of the console. So here's where I would lift the center console again. I'm going to work this in over the shifter. Goes around the cup holders. Seats right down into place. And the last bit is the part right around the shifter. Again, make sure that you make all of your connections. So we are going to hook up our USB, our power outlet, and our descent control. Fit that over the shifter, and that will snap right back into place. All right, so there you have it. We've done a lot of audio upgrades to our 4th Gen 4Runner today. We already had the previously installed Sony plug-and-play bundle. We added Kicker 6-speaker plug-and-play bundle. We added a Kicker 660.5 5-channel amp and a 10-inch downfire box. So a lot of improvement over the sound and the experience over just a few short hours ago. So if you want to pick up any of these for your 2003 to 2009 4th Gen 4Runner, head over to the shop at trailgridpro.com. Like always, have a blast out there.